Hey, World Vision fans! This is your global original Nashtaters bringing you back another week of news. That is right, folks. This week is actually going to be a pretty big week because we're going to be seeing a brand new collaboration while we're at the tail end of another one. And is this going to be good for global players? I'm not sure, but either way, it is going to be interesting topic of conversation. On top of all this, recent announcement on JP of the element reveal of the 4 units that's announced for Final Fantasy VII Remake is going to probably put some head spinning notions in people's heads. Let's go ahead and go over all the stuff that's coming. Before we move forward, let's go ahead and do a tiny bit of house cleaning. I want to thank everybody for supporting my most recent video that I put out on Sunday. Now, that video was originally shot, I believe, on Thursday, and I wanted to set it for release for Saturday morning. Unfortunately, I completely forgot about it, even though I shot and edited it. I forgot to upload it. And so I decided that after my Saturday shift, I just went ahead and uploaded it before I went back to sleep for Sunday. I did work Sunday and Saturday, so I'm quite tired, but I took a shower and I feel a little bit refreshed. So I feel like it's a good time to make sure I put this video out. And so I want to thank y'all for giving me good feedback on that video, talking about I should do a little bit better research in terms of covering the stuff that I was covering, which will be obviously in that case the coat, and of course make sure that I get good visuals on a website that I decided to use for reference in terms of showing you guys in terms of the numbers and whatnot. I think moving forward, the easier way would be just tell you what website to go to, which, like I always say, ultimate.jp. And of course, I should just go ahead and maybe make some slides showcasing the stats I want to show you guys. So again, I want to thank all those people for giving me really good feedback. So moving forward here, let's talk about what is coming. First and foremost, Final Fantasy Update number 2 YouTube video is out. If you want to listen to Hiroki and Justin, definitely support the channel and go ahead and watch that video for yourself. Class Match is coming. Since I'm not really a huge fan of Class Match, I do not want to talk about it since I'm not really considered an expert of any kind. I do want to talk about the fact that Scene 3 of Chapter 13 is coming, and I know a lot of people look forward to the continuation of the storyline because that is one of the driving forces of why people play RPGs. And the big thing for me really is actually arena change. And the map change will occur on the 26th, and we will be seeing magic resistance up and defense piercing rate up for the map effect. So good luck to you guys who are actually heavily into arena. Personally, I'm not really into arena that much, but I do enjoy it once in a while. And unfortunately, I'm not a huge fan of the mines map, but I think the new arena map effect definitely is actually pretty cool, and maybe put a little spin in trying to mess around with that meta shift. So let's get to the meat of all this, which will be 2B and 9S. And get ready for some cringe factor here. The biggest question people are going to be asking themselves is 2B or, of course, not to be. Because 2B will be on a banner in which perhaps people are thinking about summoning for her. Well, let me take that back. Technically speaking, they're not he or she because I think they're machines, so they don't really have genders. So I'm gonna, for the sake of just looking at them, I'm still gonna refer to them as he and she. So she will be on her own banner, hopefully, and therefore give people the chance to summon for her. I'm pretty sure they're gonna give us a 9-step, so you probably have a good chance to try to get her. So make sure you ask yourself to be or not to be. 9S, as revealed here, I will scroll down a little, will be the absolutely free unit. All you have to do is log in and summon the guaranteed free summons, and you will be getting him through that specific banner. Now let's talk about 2B. 2B is going to be of wind element. Now with the recent announcement on JP during a stream, which occurred I believe on Saturday our time, they announced that Final Fantasy VII Remake 4 units announced for the collaboration. We have Tifa, we have Cloud, we have Barrett, and of course we have Area. So here's the thing. A lot of us, including myself, during my Friday stream, and by the way, thank you for those who came and showed me support, we were discussing the topic of what elements we were hoping the new units were going to be. I think most of us thought Tifa was going to be water, and we're hoping Cloud will be light. But as it turns out, there's absolutely zero light or dark units. And I think that's good because we, perhaps as a player base, have seen quite a bit of emphasis by the designers on light and dark. And I think it's a good time to really kind of start looking at some of the other elements. Tifa is announced to be wind, so that may affect people's decision making on whether or not to actually summon for 2B. Because if you enjoy wind, you might want to start pairing these lovely ladies up. And Cloud is going to be lightning, and 9S, who is lightning himself, is free. So you may be considering summoning for Cloud to have some nice lightning teams. And of course, Barret, it's technically speaking, probably a lot of us thought would be fire, but turns out he's actually ice. And Aerith, who ended up being water, I was actually quite happy about that because regardless if she's a supporting, healing, whatever, I just like her and I will definitely want her. And lately I've been really falling in love with water and I would definitely want her on my team. And so regardless of what people are thinking individually and what preference of both playing style, of course, and a matter of aesthetic pleasing units, I think we have to think about also elements, right? I know there's a lot of talk about mono element teams, and I know that perhaps in JP that's not fully showcased or highlighted yet. But I think on global, a lot of players are leaning towards building mono teams because, well, they just enjoy it. Now, I'm not sure if it's something that needs to be done in terms of content, but at least looking forward into the far future down the road where we're going to have selection maps in which you can farm for UR unit shards that's exclusive for those maps, but you can only use lower rarity units of the same element. So all these things must be taken into consideration when you start moving forward with building more units. And of course, you know, that's something you need to really think about, right? Because it makes a lot of sense. Because planning ahead is important in this type of game. So let's talk about a little bit 2B. She's going to be essentially one of those units that really enjoys putting up barriers. She can also put up, you know, a good amount of output in terms of damage, slash resistance piercing rate for up to 3 turns increase, and of course dealing large damage there. Impaler deals large damage and piercing, which is kind of cool here. Lower slash and attack for 3 turns. But it's those barrier on self that reduce physical damage for 3 turns. So one thing to remember is that she is wind, and one of the most recent units released is Auron, who is essentially a barrier killer, right? He hates barriers, gets rid of them, and then beats you down afterwards. And if you're thinking about heart counters, clearly Auron is going to be a heart counter here against 2B. 9S looks pretty cool. And by the way, let's go back to 2B. She looks amazing. Okay, let's be honest. These two units look really well designed. The extreme art design, if you will, it's just it fits them, right? They're essentially soulless things or whatever. Maybe they're have souls. I don't know. I don't really know too much about the story, but they look cool to me. And if they're both androids, robots of some sort, they're really well designed. So kudos to the artist. Neuro hacking raises own defense piercing rate for 3 turns, then deal large lightning damage. Hacking, okay, cool name. Deal lightning damage to target, and then of course lower attack and magic. Raises defense and spirit allies. I like that. Shield deployment, that's pretty cool. So obviously the new vision card caters to one of these units, and of course they decided to choose the unit that you will have to try the summon for, because, well, it makes sense, right? For the premium player base, as like I'll call them now, right? The heavy Kraken, heavy whale, heavy spenders, they're the ones most likely going after the card and the unit. And for a lot of us free-to-play players, light spenders, we'll probably have to heavily consider passing simply because we're still dealing with Final Fantasy X. And I think that's where the topic of conversation of the gap between JP and global comes in. And it's not so much about trying to segregate players in terms of what server they choose, but it's more like the fact that global players have a heads up. We get to see what's coming, and unfortunately that's going to somewhat dictate of how our spending habit is going to be. And I think ultimately that contributes to the notion that global players don't spend as much as JP players, partially because, well, global players like to be perhaps nitpicky of units they play with, or two, simply because we know what's coming. And when we know what's coming, we can plan better, we can plan ahead farther, and ultimately we want to make the decision whether or not to skip certain things, right? And unfortunately, it is what it is. So until the day they kind of sort of merge the two in terms of release dates, we're going to constantly deal with that situation. And we're going to get this sort of branding on global that we're not as heavy spinners as JP players. But this card essentially caters to win units and ultimately gives 2B extra bonus. And I think that's where the global update comes in, is the fact that it's catering more to 2B. I think if you're just not thinking about the 2B global update, you can still consider this to be a very, very good card for your win team. Something to actually think about if you're really thinking about heavily investing in win units, especially given the fact that Tifa will be absolutely free. But ultimately, we probably should start making a video talking about the fact that, do we have enough resources? And is it really worthy of start dumping tons of resources to build even 9S? Is it even physically possible for the bulk of the player base? And perhaps that will be a different topic of conversation for what's coming up this week. Well, now we're dealing with the standard 120 shards for the units during the bingo board, and of course 75 shards for the vision card during the bingo board. It is interesting of note that they're also releasing Amusement Park, which will be a chocobo expedition. Now keep in mind, I'm essentially a medium spender, and I have only access to 2 maps on the chocobo expeditions. And essentially what it means is, when you open up both, you only get the best materials, I think, from either or, right? So at the end, when you're collecting, you're going to get the best stuff from those maps. And this is also a dilemma, as I see when they combine, or you're, overlapping 2 collaborations. People are going to have to start making a decision. Do they want to kind of stop working on Final Fantasy X and start working on the new collaboration? Or are they going to kind of hold off a little bit on the new collaboration and try to finish Final Fantasy X? Again, not a huge fan of this concept that they're overlapping, but it is something that perhaps we'll have to get used to moving forward into the future. The last thing I want to finish off with will be all the quests and campaigns that's going to be associated with this collaboration. Login bonuses, we're going to be getting 3,000 visitors absolutely free simply by logging in for 10 straight days. You also get 80 shards of each unit, and you also get 40 total mind spheres when they all become level 99s. So this is kind of really neat, and of course, hopefully this is something we'll be seeing as a norm going forward into the future. As with all events, you get to farm medals, and this is going to be no exception. You farm a bunch of medals as you're playing the events, and you can use them to purchase really goody stuff from the mock shop. The 2 new weapons, by the way, these are really cool names: Virtuous Contract and Cruel Arrogance. Samurai sword and a spear. And I think I will cover these, and in the terms of whether or not you should be spending your resources on them. I still recommend farming for the recipes, and most likely you have to anyway, since you'll be farming the event for medals and of course the items in order to build up the 2 units or one of the units. It's also interesting enough, you can get +3 versions. Of course, there's going to be RNG involved because the subtype will be completely random. I think we're going to cover those in a different video, so I'm not going to kind of elaborate any more on that. Another interesting note, when you do a separate bingo board for this specific collaboration, you will be getting a pod 153 as is named, and MR quality equipment. We're going to cover that, of course, in either a separate video or with the same video in which I'll be covering the 2 weapons. All very, very cool stuff. By the way, kudos to the artist. I think the art for this design of Nier is just superb, right? It just looks amazing. So definitely can't wait for this collaboration, and can't wait to get my hands on 9S because he looks very promising and it definitely favors my playing style. So unfortunately, that's all the time for this video. I want to thank y'all for the support. Until next time, take care of yourself, all your loved ones. Nashtaters out of here. Take care.